Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm Trinity. I'm from a rural, small town, northern Alberta, way north. Nobody usually knows where we're from. And I grew up in this area. I was one of the very fortunate kids that grew up with a very financially observant mom. And she taught me a lot about financials, budgeting, managing my money as a teenager. And that led me into wanting to help other people do that, because where I'm from, there's a lot of oil money. Alberta is huge on two things. It's farming and oil. And so what a lot of people would do after we graduated, they go off to work in the oil field, and they'd come back, they'd have big trucks, they'd have awesome toys like sleds and quads and bikes, and they'd have nothing in the bank, and they'd be poor, and they'd have to go make some more money for the next month. And I wanted to help people get out of that rat race, enjoy what they do, make that money in the oil field if that's what they wanted to do, but actually save it. And I was really ideological in that I can save the world, just me working at a bank. And I was in the banking industry for, oh my goodness, 8 years. I've been in the finance industry now for 11. And I realized that while banks have their places, unfortunately, they don't educate their staff enough to really give a full comprehensive to really do too much for their clients. They can help in one way, shape, or form. They can't do a full comprehensive review or restructuring of their clients' financials. And so I went independent, and that's what I do now. I am an independent financial broker. I work with like 50 of Canada's top financial companies, from investments to insurances to mortgages to consumer proposals and bankruptcy agencies to car dealerships that aren't actually the dealerships, they're just the loans that are much better than your traditional stealing loans. I hate to say that, that's my own personal opinion. And so what I do is I help families find a way to live their dreams again. So we've lost that ability to dream. When you were younger, and this is probably cliche to say, but when you were younger, everybody would say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you'd say astronaut or cowboy or singer or fill in the blank. And nobody told you that you can't do it, or if they did, was few and far between. Now, however, if you're 18 and you say, I want to be an astronaut, what are you told? Well, that's not realistic. Choose a backup. What's not realistic? What if you could actually achieve those dreams? What if you could put your money where your mouth was, with a plan that fits your, what's affordable to you, and with a plan that actually gets you to a place where you're not just surviving in the 9 to 5 or the shift work, but you're thriving in your dream life. Whether that dream life is, I want to take 3 vacations a year, or for me, I have big dreams and I want to completely fund a vet clinic for emergency medical procedures for animals and spay and neuters. All of them I want to be able to pay for. That's expensive. I have big money dreams. So what am I going to do to get there? Well, I already have a financial plan built and in place to do that. Maybe your dream is just to be able to go on 2 or 3 vacations a year. Whatever that dream is to you, we want to help you get there. And we start with step 1. We do what's affordable, what means the most to you. And that's what I do. I make dreams realistic by helping you with your finances. Really, it's a long answer.
And that's a beautiful answer, because I think that's what the expectation of financial advisors was, right? I remember before I got experience with finances and things of that nature, I wasn't taught how to cash a check. I didn't taught about the importance of investing and things along that nature, because unfortunately it's not taught in school. It's something you kind of have to pick up, right? So for you, Trinity, what are some of the roadblocks that you see in the clients that you deal with that is preventing them from, one, understanding finances better, and two, reaching the type of dream that you so you eloquently articulated?
That's a very heavy question because I could go on and on about the answers.
Go on and on like Erica Badu, please.
So to answer the first part, the lack of education, right? We don't know where we can go to trust our education. There's a lot of very smart, very successful people giving financial education now on our social media devices, on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook, and whatnot. And that's great. But there's also some people who don't know what they're talking about, or who just hit it big this one time on social media. And for somebody who doesn't have the experience in the financial industry, it can be difficult to tell the difference. They can be like, oh, well, so-and-so told me, and I'm not hating on this investment type. Somebody told me to put all of my money in cryptocurrency, and I lost it all the next day. There's so many different types of investments that are good for different purposes, and there's no one investment that somebody should only invest in. When you have the proper education provided to you, you have the proper people talking to you. They talk to you about diversity, about having your money in different pots. It's not keeping all of your eggs in one basket. So that's essential. You can't just put all of your money into gold, all of your money into crypto, and not lose anything or not get the returns that you wanted. Like that the fluctuations are going to be outside of what you expect in the returns. So it's the lack of financial education. And unfortunately, my experience, I'm not going to talk about the industry as a whole, because obviously I can only speak to my own experiences. In the 8 years that I was working in the banks, I was promoted, 5 times. Actually, coincidentally, I was also in 5 different locations for just the one bank. And I was only taught how to sell our bank's products. I remember this one client very specifically in my last year at the bank. And he had come in, sat down, and he was like, I need a consolidation loan. I can't handle all these payments. I need to put them all together. I'm drowning in this debt. And I specifically remember this because I didn't actually give him a loan, even though we applied for it. He didn't actually take the loan, because what we did is we sat down, and what happens when you sit with an advisor is they go through your stuff. They go, okay, what are your assets? What are the things you own? What are the things you owe on? What are your debts? And what's that ratio? So what are your payments every month in comparison to the money you bring in? And there's a specific threshold that bankers and loan officers look for. And he was way under, like he was doing really good. He was making, I believe, because this was several years ago now, I believe he was bringing in about between $10,000 and $12,000 a month after taxes. And he didn't have enough money to pay for payments that were only a couple $100s for some reason. Now, he did have a lot of kids. He had, and this is where I also can't remember exactly, but he either had 4 or 6 kids. I think it was 6, because he had a giant family. I remember thinking, holy, that's giant. And then, so we technically put the application through. I sent it in. But then after he left, I had some free time. And I went through the last 3 months of his banking. And you'll never believe how much money he was spending on eating, food, groceries, eating out per month. It was $6,000 Canadian, spending just so much money. And when I went through it, I had printed out all of his paperwork, because I'm a very pen and paper person. Printed out all of his statements, was highlighting and like categorizing and color coding. And he was spending a ton of money eating out, which is where a lot of this came from. And so I gave him a call and I said, hey, I don't have your loan back yet, but why don't we get together and sit down? I found another option that we could do potentially. When can you and your wife come in? So he came in, and by the time he came in, the loan was back, the loan was approved, no big deal. So we had a backup should he reject my first idea. But I sat him down and I showed him his statements, and I showed him where I added up all of his eating out and all of his groceries and the like, and then the total at the end for the last 3 months. I showed him this and I was like, how attached are you to eating out this often? Because this is a lot. I understand you're a family of 8, but I grew up knowing, like, I have a family that's a family of 6. They have 4 kids. They don't spend nearly that amount of money. Not even close. I was like, how attached are you to eating out? Like, this is what's going on. And once he saw that, he was speechless. He looked like he had been slapped. But the thing is, this was his second consumer proposal. This was his second consolidation loan. Another advisor has sat down with him, did this loan up, got his debt down, and he racked it back up again because they didn't fix the actual problem. And that's the issue, is we don't fix the actual problem. We fix the symptoms in the banks. So what I did is I went and I fixed the problem. I said, look, this is where your issue is. So he decided to cut back on his eating out and cook more at home. He cut it in half. So instead of spending $6,000, he spent $3,000, which in my personal opinion is still way too much for a family of 8 in our area. Like, still double what I personally feel they should be spending, but he still cut it in half. He had an extra $3,000 every single month to put towards his debts. And that's what he did. 3 months later, I give him a call, and I had checked out his stuff, what his progress was like, paying off the debts that he had with us. I couldn't obviously see what he was doing with the outside debts that weren't with my bank. And I congratulated him because he was almost paid off. He had over $20,000 in total. And with the stuff he held with our bank, he was almost paid off in 3 months after cutting his eating out in half. Well, his total food bill for the month in half. I think it was 2 months later. I don't think it was a complete 3 months later. He called me and he said, I'm completely paid off. How can I make sure to never get in this again? And so we came in, we set up a full investments and savings, and we figured out a plan for him. When my boss saw that I had a loan that was approved on the system, and I had told him that we decided to just budget instead, I spent the time to help this guy budget, or to at least see how much he was spending. It was not looked at very kindly. A typical consolidation loan doesn't make the bank a whole lot of money. So it wasn't like, oh, here's a mortgage worth hundreds of thousands of dollars versus, it was only going to give the bank, I think in total, $5,000 or $6,000 in interest, which seems like a lot. And it's a lot for you to pay, but on the bank side of things, that's not really a lot in revenue. But he was not happy. I was supposed to have given this guy a loan. Instead, this guy got debt free in 5 or 6 months, and he didn't have to pay that much interest. And I was not congratulated for it. I was not congratulated for helping this client actually gain freedom in his life, actually start going towards his goals. The first question out of their mouth when I told them, hey, he's paid off, is, great, have you sold him some investments? So that's where the disconnect lies on the financial education part. And that's also why we don't dream, is because we're taking advice, but from people who are so, I don't want to say closed-minded or narrow-minded, but they're focused on the short term. The bankers are focused on making their numbers, making their quotas for the quarter. Their bosses are focused on making money for the year for their branch to keep them open, which is totally, it's business. That's what it is. It's business. It's not necessarily evil. It's business. But we're also told, going back to what we were talking about before, Train, is how often are you told to pick something, a dream that's more realistic? Pick a backup. So one, we're not given the financial education that we need. In high school, in college, I had to go to my second year of college to get a personal finance course that taught me what a checkings account was, which is ridiculous. I was like, I already know this. I've been in the bank for 3 years. And two, nobody encourages us to dream. Everybody plays it safe because we're so used to chasing security and stability instead of taking a smidgen of risk, even if it's only a little bit, and trusting ourselves, putting the faith in ourselves that we can do a little more. Because that's where it falls, is we don't trust ourselves to make it happen, because just go to work. There's the paycheck, there's the job. They'll give you your benefits. Here's how much we're willing to pay you to give up on your dreams. That's where my problem lies. And I could go on forever about this, but
What you're saying is something that I experienced myself, because I had no idea about finances up until I decided to look into it myself. And as I got older with age, I understood why it's not in school. And for those who are listening, this is going to sound very dark, very sad, but the world needs a class of people that do not know how to obtain financial understanding or freedom. They're going to be, unfortunately, the bottom of the middle class or the working class, or they're going to be the lower class citizens, meaning that no matter what happens to them, they're going to go to work, shut up, earn their money, and continue. A lot of our grandparents were that way, right? A lot of people who worked long hours, who said that you don't leave this company no matter what. 40 years, 50 years, you get your pension, you go, and then when you have children, they know who you are. Like, oh, aren't you the son? Aren't you the daughter of Trinity? Yeah, he spent 50 years here. Do you want a job? And the cycle continues. And I think a lot of times, if everyone were to have the knowledge that maybe I have, or that definitely Trinity is looking to share with each and every one of you, you'd be better off and you'd make wiser decisions, because there's a lot of power in your dollar. There's a lot of power in understanding where that dollar can take you. And for you, Trinity, when you're working with your clients, how important is it for you to make them understand that, one, they have the power to change their situation, and two, you can help them get the abilities to do so?
So it's extremely important, because here's the thing. I could build you, let's say Terrainian and I sit down, I could build you a full comprehensive plan that helps you get to where you want to go. It's within your budget. It doesn't scare the living poop out of you. I mean, might make you nervous because you're like, oh my gosh, this is happening, but it's not terrifying. I could do all of that. But if you don't believe that it's going to work, if you don't believe and understand, at least at a high level, how it's going to help you and what we're doing, and it's part in the plan, how likely is it that you're going to stick to it? We can set up a ton of automations to make it just a set it and forget it, which me personally, I know I need. So many of my clients need it. And I know for you and your listeners and all of you that are listening, you probably know somebody, that multiple somebodies that needs a set it and forget it plan, because not everybody likes to be fully involved all day, every day. If we were fully involved in absolutely every aspect of our lives, we would be completely overwhelmed. It would just be way too much, because like that's the whole point behind things like HelloFresh and automatic investments. Like they just automatically do it. They take something off your plate. That's why companies have auto ships. Hey, we're going to send you 1 month's worth of X product in a month, we're going to bill you and ship you another product so that you don't have to think about it. And it just makes your life easier so that you can focus on the things that matter. Do people get you and you just keep paying for something that maybe you don't use? Yes. So we need to be conscious of that fact. But there is a benefit in it. And so when you build a full comprehensive financial plan, it is super important to understand and to be aware of your own abilities. And to build a plan around that. It is super important to be educated and to ask your advisor so many questions, and every question that you have, because if you're not 100% confident in the plan that you guys have put together, again, you're not going to keep it. And for me, for someone like me who's not on salary, I need to make sure that I keep my clients for a long time, because that takes a lot of work to get new clients. And I would prefer to build relationships with them and help them throughout their lifetime. And the only way that I can do that is making sure that they stick around long term, by making sure that they understand and their needs are met and their wants are met, and they feel valued, they feel heard, and they understand what's going on. And so to answer your question, that it's so incredibly important. It's the only way to do business, in my personal opinion. You can no longer be that car salesman that's just going and making sales, or go door to door and make sales and have no relationship with the people that you're with. You have to have a holistic, full, comprehensive view of what your clients are looking for. And that includes, me involving the kids in it, because unlike, 50, 60 years ago, companies today will replace you. Well, companies back then would replace you and no problem, would replace your dad and no worries. But back then there was a lot more loyalty going both ways, from employer to employee, and vice versa. And today it's just not the case. And speaking from my own experience. So the moment that I left the company, I was practically shunned by everybody who worked there. So it's so important that things change and we do things the way we need to today.
For those who are watching on Facebook, YouTube, and my social media, please subscribe for more fantastic interviews like the one I have with Trinity today. And she's not from the Matrix because she's escaped. And we will be back for more. So stay tuned.